I'm Michael Knowles, here to tell you that Rules for Retrogrades, the book and the show, are out now, and you absolutely need to check it out before the thought police confiscate all of it and lock you away.
Rules for Retrogrades out today. Counter disruption. We're disrupting the plans of the radicals. Everyone pick up a copy if you don't already have one. And if you do have one, please leave a review in all the relevant places so that we get it into the hands of all the people that need it. Rules for Retrogrades. Rise.
Welcome to Rules for Retrogrades, Parish Orphans, Retrogrades, COVID-19 shut-ins out there. We're happy to come back to you with another numbered episode of Rules for Retrogrades with our friend Jesse Romero, a man who needs no introduction here. Lots of guests, I have to look at their bio and read their bio, but Jesse Romero's the man, the legend, has been in the game a long time. And Jesse, we're excited to have you on again for, I think, the second or third time. Rules for Retrogrades. How are you, brother?
I'm too blessed to be stressed. Thanks for having me on, Gordon Brothers. Love it.
Yeah, good to see you, Jesse. We all have mustaches today, so it's going to be an extra special episode. I can assure everybody.
It's going to be a high testosterone show.
Yeah,
oh, yeah.
Of course.
Hell yeah.
We got
locker room talk. Locker room talk.
Captain Locker talk.
On road Trump. Well, we always, BS aside, we love having you on because it's some guests you look at their CV and you say, oh, this should be a great talk, and then the chat doesn't go anywhere. No chemistry, right? No homo. But whenever we have on Jesse, or whenever Jesse and I do a talk together or get to hang out anywhere, because we're sort of West Coast brothers. Now he's partly displaced. He's in the state next to us. But it's just always fun hanging out with Jesse and your wife and your family, and just a good time. So today, of course, we want to talk to you about your newest book. You're really putting out the high volume output, Jesse, because you came the Devil in Los Angeles book was great. We interviewed you on that, and now we're interviewing you today on your Catholic Vote for Trump book with Tan. We're really excited to talk about this one with you.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's important because I didn't come to this conviction or conclusions overnight. In fact, 3.5 years ago, Donald Trump was the last guy that I was going to vote for. When I'm looking at the candidates that are running on the Republican side, he was the last guy. Yeah. And little by little, he made his way to the top, and I was still very reticent. But again, I'm open-minded. There's a thing in Catholicism, in Catholic Christianity that we promote. It's called conversion. People change. We have Saul of Tarsus, who's now Saint Paul the Evangelist. You have Emperor Constantine, who became one of the greatest Christian emperors in history and gave religious liberty to Catholics. And so I said, all right, God can do anything in a human heart that's open. And so I believe 3.5 years later, I think that I've seen a man he's going through a conversion just like I am. And I think that he's the best man for the job right now to lead this country. And that's why me and my partner, John McCullough, who's an Irish Catholic, blue-collar guy as well, that's why we've got together and put this book together.
Yeah. Yes, sir. I'm going to be honest with people. I don't know if I've ever said this publicly, but it wasn't his Twitter account. It wasn't his saltiness. I always liked that, but I thought he was a salty sounding soft rhino during the start of the primary. I wrote in Ted Cruz last time. I am proud to cast my vote on November 3rd, 2020 for President Donald J. Trump almost immediately. I was excited on election night, as I'm sure you were, Jesse. I know Dave was, when he was beating the pantsuit off of Hillary. No one wants to see that, but we needed it done, right? But I'm ashamed I didn't vote for him, and it wasn't because I thought he was too salty. His saltiness on Twitter and in the primaries was the only thing I liked about him. But you're indeed right. In terms of the locker room talk, that doesn't That's bawdiness. That's different from saltiness. That's a more serious issue. Yeah, he seems to be going through a conversion. He's got a Catholic wife, and you know what? He's doing a good job. Why can't people separate the man Trump from the office of president, irrespective of his conversion? Why is that so hard for people?
I agree, and that's what I've tried to do in the book. The fact is, he's the most pro-life president in my lifetime. Okay, he's the most pro-religious liberty president in my lifetime. And I think I could even argue quite well that he's the most Catholic-friendly president in my lifetime. He's a friend of Catholics. And again, he's not Catholic, he's Presbyterian. But I will tell you this, that the fact that he is married to a Catholic and understanding the sacramental structure of marriage, the fact that her prayers, because she's a sacramental Christian, have a very powerful effect on her husband. And can you imagine how many people are praying for her and him as well? Whether you like President Trump or not, if you're a Catholic, you have a mandate to pray for him. It's right in the Bible. 1 Timothy chapter 2, verses 1 and 2. This is our obligation as Catholics to pray for those in authority. And so if you're a Catholic that still says, I'm not going to vote for him, I don't like the way he talks, you're still obligated to pray for him, because this is what the scripture tells us to do.
Yeah. Well, can you give all the Catholics out there that might be, for whatever reason, on the fence about voting for President Trump in this next election, can you give people maybe the top 3 reasons in your mind why we should vote for him over, of course, what looks like the presumptive nominee in Joe Biden?
It's very sad, but right now, as it stands, the Democratic Party, and I used to be a Democrat. I was born and raised in the Democrat Party, blue-collar Latino from the barrios of Southern California. Everybody in my family was a blue-collar Democrat, union worker. Everybody in the parish was a Democrat. But that party has been hijacked. It's no longer the party of, say, John F. Kennedy or Robert F. Kennedy. The Kennedys that said, don't ask what this country can do for you. Ask what you can do for this country. There's a complete inversion of thought now. Now you have AOC, Bernie Sanders, and others, spokesmen in the party, are saying, the heck with work. And in fact, AOC said yesterday, what do you mean go back to work? Is that what you call liberty? No, don't go back to work. Ask what this country can do for you. This country owes you. And so that aside from the fact that the Catholic Church founded capitalism, back in the Middle Ages, aside from that, Amen. I think the preeminent issue for me as a Catholic, because I'm going to stand face to face with the Lord Jesus Christ one day, and so are you, and so is everybody else. We've all got an exit interview with Jesus, okay? And when I look at, for example, Pope John Paul II, the Gospel of Life, St. Mother Teresa, her speech at Harvard University, the preeminent issue of the day is the issue of killing babies. What side are you on?
Right.
150 years ago, the preeminent issue would have been slavery. Hey, this guy sounds good. You agree with everything. He lines up with your values and policies. But what does he believe about slavery? The issue of abortion is to me the issue. It's the deal breaker. It's the issue that breaks the camel's back. And at this point, let's just be honest. The Democrat Party at this point is all in for abortion, all 9 months. And in fact, many of them in their party are even pushing infanticide. Now, I mean, you could just do a Google search on Donald Trump and you'll see dozens and dozens of articles from reputable places like Church Militant, LifeSite News, Lepanto Institute on all the cutting and slashing that he's doing. He's using the death by 1,000 slashes because he can't overturn Roe versus Wade. So he just is using the technique of death by 1,000 slashes, one order here, one order there. He gets it. he gets it that the issue, the preeminent issue, I mean, we can't enjoy liberty and the pursuit of happiness if we don't give people, every American, life at the very beginning. The Democrats don't get that. The Democrats don't know the difference between serving their constituents and killing their constituents. A quote from Father Frank Pavone. And on that issue, President Trump is very strong. He's had a conversion on that issue.
Yeah. Well, he's a mutual friend of ours, a recent friend, Father Pavone. We had him on the show last week, and we were honored to do that. As you know, Father Pavone's really impressive on the issue of Trump. He knows the candidacy of President Donald J. Trump backwards and forwards.
Insider. He's an insider.
He's inside baseball. Unlike us, I don't know about you, Jesse, but you might be more an insider than we are. But it was really impressive to hear him talk about. I mean, we're a couple of lawyers. My main bag is constitutional law. So, like you said, Trump can't do anything monolithically about the Roe versus Wade, qua Roe versus Wade. What he can do, indirectly, in what Thomas Aquinas would call second potency, is place justices on the high bench, or the high court, the federal court and SCOTUS. And this means, as far as we're concerned, we talked to Lizzie Rizet about this. You must vote for Donald J. Trump in 2020, given the fact that 2, maybe 3 seats will be open on the high court. There's no discussion about it, right? This could be the moment where indirectly he reverses Roe versus Wade, even though he can't do it on his own monolithically.
Right.
Yeah. Again, it's he's doing what they call in the military. He's flanking the enemy. He's coming from behind. He knows that he doesn't have the power to to abolish Roe versus Wade. And so what's he doing? He's stacking the deck with people in the judiciary that are people that have this strict constitutionalist mindset, and that are people of faith. Because the Democrats, they stacked the deck, and they started in the 60s. They were very smart to go after the courts. And Trump has realized, this is how they outflanked us. So he's using their technique by putting conservative people of faith in the courts. He's using their tactic against them, because the left, they knew that nobody would ever vote for some of the things that they were trying to promote. So they knew that they had to take the courts. They knew they had to take the legislature. And that's exactly what President Trump is doing right now. I think he's got like over 200 appointments. If he wins for president the next 4 years, there's probably 1, maybe 2 Supreme Court justices that are in their late 80s and have health problems. They're going to be retiring or stepping off the bench. The fact is, this is a game changer. For him to win in 2020 is a game changer, because I'm going to be honest with you, this entire thing of this, I call it the Wuhan communist Chinese virus. Okay, that's what it's a communist Chinese virus.
Yes, it is.
The PC word is the coronavirus. Corona to me means crown. Only Christ has a crown. Okay, corona. It's the Wuhan communist Chinese virus. And let me tell you something. This is a consequence. I know a lot of prelates won't say this because they got to be PC and watch themselves. Biblical theology is very simple. God punishes wicked nations with wars, pestilences, and plagues. That's biblical salvation history theology. Modernism says, oh no, it's we're offending Mother Earth, and that's why this is happening. The fact of the matter is, you know why this is happening? This virus and other things will happen if 2 things have to stop. We got to stop killing babies, because we become a nation of Moloch. Okay? Yeah. Moloch is the Old Testament demon god that the pagans would take babies and kill them at the statue's feet. And the second thing is, we become a nation of Sodom and Gomorrah. We're marrying men and marrying women. These two sins are called an abomination to God. In the catechism, they are categorized as the 4 sins that are the absolute worst sins. They're mortal sins on steroids. And the Democrat Party, This is their great contribution to our society. And the fact is, we can expect more plagues and wars and pestilence if we don't stop butchering our babies like Aztecs, and if we don't stop marrying men and promoting sodomy. These are, of the 4 sins that scream to heaven, we are guilty right now in America for 2 of these sins. And let's just be honest. This has been forced and ramrodded down our throats through judicial activist judges by the Democrat Party and by rhinos too. Okay, we'll throw them in there as well.
Yeah, the first week of November 2016, a week that changed the world, changed world history, WikiLeaks came out with the email dumps from Clinton campaign staffers. And one of those emails, Jesse, did you ever see this one? Hillary Clinton making a joke about sacrificing a rabbit or something to Moloch. And that's not something that was even in the popular consciousness before first week of November 2016. And now everyone's saying Moloch this, Moloch that. People on the right are like, the left is the party of Moloch. Hillary Clinton was talking about it before anyone else was. The spiritual combat became so undeniably real in the election of 2016 that I don't see how anyone denies it. Trump, unexpected leader and chieftain for the forces of good and the forces of Christendom, though he may be like Constantine, he emerged. And the people that sit around and say, oh, isn't Trump just in it for himself? Which I'd like you to address. When you look at the odds, the way they stack up, it's a preposterous claim. People, well, I want to shake them by the lapels. Deal with it. Am I right? I mean, is this what your book does? Does it say, people, it's Moloch versus the forces of good. It's Moloch versus St. Michael. And Trump, yes, it was a surprise 3.5 years ago. He's emerged as the chieftain for the forces of good.
You know, it's funny that people say that he's in it for himself. Let's take a look at that statement. First of all, the Catechism says that the definition of love, it comes from St. Thomas Aquinas, is to desire and to will what's best for another person. Okay, that's the Thomistic definition of love. Well, guess what? President Trump is a successful businessman. He doesn't need this job. He doesn't need to wake up every morning and get insulted by the mainstream media, have his wife insulted and his kids insulted, and have one bogus investigation after another into his taxes, into this and that and the other. He doesn't need that. He could go off into the sunset and never work a day in his life. But yet, why is he doing this? He's doing this because he generally loves, in the Christian definition, he wants what's best for the little guy, for the forgotten man, for the blue collar man, for people just like you and I. In fact, for those people that say that he's in it for himself, well, he's the first president that I know of that doesn't take a paycheck. How's that? Okay. Yeah. And how's that? In fact, this paycheck for 2020 right now, he's giving it back to this coronavirus task force. So the fact of the matter is, I don't know any person that works as long as he does. The guy puts in about a 10 to 15 hour day for free.
Right.
For free.
Seriously.
And gets insulted on every channel just about, and his wife and his kids day in and day out. Now, does he love people? Let me tell you, before this Wuhan communist Chinese virus hit the American shores, he had the best economy in the history of our country, I dare say, at least in the last 60 years. Who does that help? That helps the little guy. That helps Mexicans, Latinos who are huge into small business, blue collar guys. It helps blacks. It helps women. In fact, those 3 categories of people had the lowest unemployment rate under President Trump before this virus hit. What, you call that love? See, the other side, when they see people hungry, they want to keep throwing fish. That way you have to stay connected to them. That way you stay on the plantation, okay? You can't get off the plantation. Donald Trump doesn't want to give people fish when they're hungry. He wants to teach people how to fish, and that's exactly what he was doing before this virus hit us. Because he understands, I mean, this is the very Catholic principle. It's right in the catechism that what a human person finds incredible dignity in work. And President Trump knows that. The other side thinks that work is undignified. They think that socialism, government overreach. I mean, AOC just said it yesterday. AOC said President Trump thinks that liberty is sending people back to work. Are you kidding me? People should refuse to go back to work. That's not liberty. This is what we're up against. And let me tell you what, I'm Hispanic. What's he done for the Latino community? Okay, I'll tell you what he's done. So I'm going to speak very laser focused here. Number one, illegal immigration affects the Latinos in the Southwest. And even Cesar Chavez knew that. Cesar Chavez, whose whole legacy has been ripped off by the left, he was against illegal immigration. He would send Minutemen to the border to police the borders because he wanted to protect the jobs of the Hispanic immigrants on this side legally in the Southwest. And so what has Trump done for the Latinos? A, lowest unemployment rate amongst Latinos in over 60 years. B, he's the only president that's serious about protecting our borders. That affects Latino communities. You know what trickles down from Mexico? What trickles down? And I know some of my family's been impacted. Okay, the cartels run drugs from the open borders to this side. Prostitution, human sex slave. Who are the victims of all that? Mexicans, Hispanics. And what else has Trump done? Trump has also seen an organization, a terrorist organization that's been terrorizing Latinos in the U.S., in all the barrios. It's called MS-13. He's the only president that's had the foresight to say, these guys are a terrorist group, and he's come down on them. He squashed these guys like a bug. Are you kidding me? St. James says, you know, faith without works is dead. Look at what he's done. What has he done for blacks? Talk about black prison reform. This has helped out the black community like no other president has. And so, I think the evidence is overwhelming that this guy's our best choice again in 2020.
Well, it seems like he brings a lot of common sense to the table. You know, common sense, especially in Washington, is an uncommon thing. We have all of these, you know, technocrats, these highfalutin ideologues who've been educated at the Harvards and the Yales, and they have advanced degrees, and they have all this pedigree from kind of the same bloodline, right? They share the same academic DNA, but they don't have 1 ounce of common sense. I think one thing that Trump brings to the office is an abundance of old school common sense, where you got it from the school of hard knocks. He got things given to him by his father, you know, lessons imparted by his dad. And that's something you just don't see with a lot of the academic pencil necks that have been in office for so long. Can you tell me, what are things that you see Trump importing from common sense, as opposed to just something that maybe you'd get some Ivy League graduate trying to do from some doctrinaire point of view? And how does this common sense work to benefit the country and the American people?
Dave, you hit a very important point, because both parties, for my entire lifetime, and I'm sure before I was born, both parties generally put in people that are professional career politicians, or what I would just call policy wonks. And it's funny the way a lot of these politicians on both sides of the aisle, they come into an office, senator, congressman, and they come in with a normal salary for a senator and a congressman, and 25, 30 years later, they are multi-millionaires like Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden. These guys are in it for themselves because these policy wonks on both sides of the aisle, they know that everybody knows that they can be bought off. And you're paying somebody a salary of $180,000 a year. It's pretty easy for some corporation to buy your influence. Here's the difference between President Trump. He came into this office not like a policy wonk. That's not his background. He came to this office like a businessman, and he's running it like a businessman. He doesn't need he doesn't need Facebook's money. He doesn't need Yahoo's money. He doesn't need Lockheed or Boeing's money. He could live off 10 times in 10 lifetimes what he's made. And so this is what makes him very effective to not be influenced by, by Wall Street. The fact that he doesn't need their money. He cares about Main Street, you and I, the little guy. I mean, this is what put him in office. He was speaking to us, the forgotten man. We're the ones that sustain this country, the middle class. We work. We're not taking freebies from the government. And it was us. We're the ones that say, this is a guy that speaks our language. And again, this guy was fashioned and formed in the streets of Queens, New York, real estate, construction. That's the school of hard knocks, to make billions of dollars in that environment. He's not, again, he knows how to deal. He's a strong negotiator. And the fact is, this is what makes him what his son Junior calls him a blue-collar billionaire. A blue-collar billionaire is that though he has the checkbook of the elites, he has the mind of a blue-collar Joe Sixpack in the pew Catholic.
But we get the best of both worlds with Trump. An important thing is he acts as a filter, this kind of blue-collar, common-sense filter for ideas that have intellectual pedigree. So he's very good, is he not, about surrounding himself with experts and then filtering out the good ideas that come from these policy experts, because obviously he is not by nature a wonk. He is a common sense non-politician, kind of a shrewd businessman who uses his business acumen as a filter to take what's good from what's bad. But he's very good, and I think you see it on the Supreme Court and in his cabinet of advisors, with surrounding himself with good people and taking their best ideas and sifting the wheat from the chaff, the good ideas from the bad. Is he not, in your experience, that too?
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree with everything you just said. And I'll tell you, there's an article that I read a while back ago from LifeSite News where they said that this president has more Catholic advisors in his cabinet than any other president in the last 60 years. So it was a LifeSite News article that was done. And his Catholic advisors, by the way, they're not Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden type Catholic, not dissenters. The Catholics that he has that are surrounding him, brown scapular, wearing the miraculous medal. Some of them go to daily mass. Faithful practicing Catholics that believe in the magisterial teachings of the church. He has surrounded himself by great Catholic minds. I find that refreshing. Another thing I find refreshing, to show you that he's a friend of Catholics, Father Pavone, he told me, and again, he's an insider. He says, as Catholics, we don't have to worry about being hauled into court by this president's administrations, because as you well know, back in 1954, there was an amendment called the Johnson Amendment that was put out by the Democrats, or a Democrat, and it was a gag order. It was an order that prohibited nonprofits, specifically churches, from making political statements. President Trump has made it known that he will not enforce the Johnson Amendment. Under Barack Obama, this is why Father Pavone was being hauled into court all the time, Priests for Life, the Little Sisters of the Poor, and other organizations that, in the Catholic Church that didn't want to allow homosexuals or lesbians to adopt babies to their agencies, they were always being hauled into court under the Obama administration because he was enforcing this Johnson Amendment saying you nonprofit churches can't get involved in the political debates. Well, guess what? Father Pavone says that's not happening with this president. He says, I can assure you as an insider, nobody will be prosecuted under the Johnson Amendment for again, trying to exercise our religious liberty. Here's also another thing, guys, that I like about President Trump. You can kind of tell a person's character by the enemies they keep.
Right.
Think about this. Think about who hates President Trump. Planned Parenthood, George Soros, Bill Gates, the Democrat Party, socialists hate him, communists hate him, Satanists hate him, witches hate him. I mean, when you look at the list of his enemies, what that tells me is that everybody who hates him hates our Lord Jesus Christ and hates the Catholic Church as well.
Yeah, amen. Jesse, could we go through? We're about out of time. We've shortened our interview format on books. So how about this? Can we try something new?
Sure.
I ask you about 4 or 5 questions because I want to get as much info about the book itself, the new book coming out, and we're going to put it up on the screen as we produce this. Just give me a one-line answer. Yes, no, one-line answer so people get the most information about your book possible, okay?
Okay.
Do you think you come down too hard on people who are skeptical about Trump from a Catholic perspective?
No, I think that people perceive that we come down hard on them. My partner and myself, John, the fact is, for Catholics, we're trying to raise the bar. We love their soul. And so our motive for our perceived coming down hard on them is out of charity for their soul.
Why do you devote a chapter to rehashing the Clinton email scandal in the book? I love that. Isn't that old news? Also, is he not running against her this time? No. So why do that?
Yeah, the reason we rehashed a little bit about the Clinton scandal because it's completely relevant as to what President Trump inherited. That's what that chapter is showing, that
Agreed.
Under the Obama-Clinton administration, he inherited the swamp. He inherited probably the most corrupt administration. I'm talking about FBI. I'm talking about people in the Department of Justice. He inherited a nightmare. That's why we rehashed some of those things in that chapter.
Do you have a problem with President Trump, a Catholic problem, Catholic moral theology, with President Trump making jokes about people, giving them nicknames, cracking wise?
Well, Tim, here's the dark side of me. I kind of like it, okay?
Yeah, me too.
This is probably concupiscence talking, all right? I mean, I grew up a vast majority of my life in police locker rooms and in boxing gyms. And so there's nothing that I haven't heard.
Right.
Yeah, that's been my experience. Boxing gyms and police locker rooms and karate studios. And so I actually find his direct approach refreshing. And I'll tell you why. Donald Trump was trained in the rhetoric of the Democrat Party. People forget he was a Democrat for most of his life. And right. Democrats are the ones that invented in-your-face speech. They're the ones that invented. In fact, there's a movement started by Democrat college kids called the Filthy Speech Movement in Berkeley back in the 60s. They're the ones that started that in-your-face type of rhetoric, the Alinsky school of demonizing your opponents. President Trump was trained that way. He grew up that way. And so now they don't know what to do with him because he's using their weapon against them. They're looking at him. They're saying, you're not supposed to talk like that. You're a Republican. Republicans don't talk like that. Their heads are spinning because he's talking just like them. And they're like saying, it's like you're having a gunfight with a guy and and you take his gun and you use it against him. This is what he's doing, and they don't know what to do with it.
How about this? What about his stance on homosexuality?
Again, when I voted for President Trump, I didn't vote for a pastor. I already have a pastor. His name's the Lord Jesus Christ. John chapter 10, verse 11, John chapter 10, verses 14. I voted for a president. I want somebody who's going to protect me from foreign enemies and domestic enemies, and I believe he's the right man for the job, and he's the right man that's also going to defend my religious liberty. I just want the government to leave me alone as a Catholic and let me and on my church bring in the social kingship of Christ. And the fact is, I mean, when somebody says, well, look at the way he talks, all I can say is the words of our Lord, John chapter 8. He who has no sins cast the first stone. How about Romans 3:23? For all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. He's a fallen man just like I am. Is he perfect in all the issues? I don't expect him to be perfect, Tim and Dave. He's not formed by Catholic thought like you and I are. And in fact, his position on the homosexual issue, he says, oh, the Obergefell decision versus Hodges, that's settled law. He's doing an end run. He's putting in conservative men of faith in the courts. But I'll tell you what, his position on Obergefell versus Hodges is not different from Bishop Barron. Bishop Barron was on the Dave Rubin show, and he said,
I know.
Hey,
I wouldn't change it.
It settled law. Just, leave it alone. Now, I give Trump a pass. He's not formed by Catholic thought. He's a Protestant Presbyterian who wasn't formed like all three of us. But Bishop Barron, a successor of the apostle? No.
Don't give him a pass.
I don't give him a. That's a compromise. I expect the successor of the apostle. It's not Trump's job to change Obergefell versus Hodges. It's the U.S. bishops and our job as Catholics to change that.
And judge him by what he does, not by what he says. He's filling the bench with constitutional conservatives. I'm sick of having it the other way, with Republican candidates, conservative candidates coming in and tickling our ears, promising us great things and never delivering on them because they don't really believe it in their heart. Trump, he's the opposite. He under-promises and over-delivers. He's going to set the bench, put on the Supreme Court bench a lot of constitutional conservatives, and because Obergefell, the gay marriage decision, the decision that allowed gay marriage is basically this fundamental constitutional right, the right to marry who you love, in the vein of Loving versus Virginia. He is going to reverse that by virtue of having good people put on the bench. So, it's one thing for him to say, well, I'm going to prescind or hold back from saying one way or the other what I think about the actual jurisprudence of this decision. It's another thing for him to be like, well, I'm going to speak with my actions. And my actions are that I'm filling the bench with people who aren't going to legislate from the judiciary, but who are going to, in turn, interpret our Constitution faithfully and textually. And that's what he's done. So actions speak louder than words. I don't care about what all these empty politicians say. I care about what they do.
Yeah. Look, we're out of time, but Jesse, we always love having you on the show. The book is A Catholic Vote for Trump. Everyone go out and get it and read it, so you're ready to go. There it is, right there. We're waiting on our copies from Tan, our fellow publisher. But the author is Jesse Romero. Do it. Go get Catholic Vote for Trump. Yeah, do it. Come on.
What accent is that, by the way? Is that like the Bronx? I'm not like good enough.
Yeah. Right. Well, yeah, but anyway, everyone really needs to read this book, and Jesse, we just always enjoy having you on. But thanks again, and we hope we'll appear with you soon. Hopefully, we'll do a talk sometime soon.
Amen. Yeah, I'm sure we will. Hey, last thing I want to say: the word COVID for me, it stands for Christ over virus, infections, and diseases. Just remember that. Christ overcomes viruses, infections, and diseases. That's what COVID stands for us.
I think that's what the WHO was actually thinking when they titled the virus that, Jesse. So,
all right, guys.
Thank you, Jesse. God bless,
God
brother.
bless. All right. Viva Cristo Rey.
Viva Cristo Rey.